Namaste to our continuation session on this Mahavidya. In our previous recording, we were at somewhere in the discussion where we were talking about the different ways a person can have a journey of transformation with regard to the spiritual processes vis-a-vis psychoanalytical growth with regard to their pathology. So, sir, my question to you was, if a personality has a tendency of fixation towards sadistic and masochistic um, life energies, there is a big possibility to be, inclined towards this Mahavidya and being just fixated there and not taking up the journey of transformation there ahead. Where you talked about how the guru has to be really a pure, wise, knowledgeable guru, genuine guru who has this understanding. And then thereon, we would like to take up the discussion further.
It was a very interesting point, actually. First response to it is Mahavidyas are not for everybody, because this is the most intense part of spirituality. So the first decision the guru has to make is this: is the person really cut out for Mahavidya? And if the pathology is of a nature that you feel that the practice of Mahavidya will strengthen the pathology instead of healing it, liberating the person, then the best is not to take that person into Mahavidya. Because this is not a democratic area, it's a highly aristocratic area. That out of 100 people, not more than 20 will qualify to really be allowed to do the Mahavidya. And for the rest 80, there are hundreds of other spiritual practices. So everyone doesn't have to go to ISTDP. You can go to many other therapies. Same is the situation here. The first is the guru has to take a call whether the person coming to him is actually cut out for Mahavidya or not, which means the ego strength has really to be very high, and the capacity of the system to bear intense affect has to be very high. And there has to be some degree of courage to really go through these intense processes. So courage, fortitude, some minimum form of moral development, and a minimum level of ego strength, and a minimum level of ability to surrender to the guru. These are absolute essentials for this path. So the first is this. The second is, if let us say a guru selects somebody who has sadomasochistic tendencies, but the guru's decision is that Mahavidya can liberate him, but he finds on the way that it's actually creating more addictions, not less. Then
exactly.
you can change it or ask the person to halt a particular process and undertake some preparatory work before going into the core Mahavidya processes, because these processes are holding darkness with both the hands and transmuting them forcefully. Now that can result easily in the darkness overwhelming you. So the guru can make a temporary halt. Guru can ask you to do some preparation before doing something else. Guru can change the path on one particular point and then come to the same problem after other softer problems have been solved. Or the guru can start by strengthening the positive part, which is to start with softer Mahavidyas and then go to those which are dealing with the bottom chakras. So these are all the ifs and buts. And despite all of this, you will still have some people who are not benefited, but who are asked not to do it any further. That can also be there. It's rare, but it can be there that the guru may feel in the middle of it that it's a mistake. This person is not cut out for it. So all of those are there. The whole thing is about results and how the person is able to follow the process. And the guru would know by the experiences the disciple reports. and the progress he makes and his overall life, whether things are going on the right track or need a modification or in extreme cases, even a temporary halt. So all of this would be the parts and parcels, because one of the core of this Mahavidya also is reporting one's inner world experiences. In Hindi they say avran utarna, which is layer after layer you delayer yourself, and that is a very deeply speaking psychological process. It may not be couched and expressed in psychoanalytic language, but it is equally deep psychoanalytic process that we are talking about in a different language. So that being there is no way that the guru cannot make out, if he is a really competent guru, whether things are going on the right track or not. And therefore, it is very difficult to be a guru in this path, because much of the work is based upon intuition and judgment. You don't have a blood test or you don't have a psychological questionnaire to test it out.
The attained wisdom and experience makes the guru gauge into the eligibility of ones
This
to
also,
acquire and go
yeah,
through.
and this also brings in a very interesting element. Should one try to develop this Mahavidya by developing questionnaires for this Mahavidya?
Okay.
This would be an interesting thought if you talk of synthesis of psychoanalysis and Mahavidya and what both gain from each other. In that sense, if you bring the rigor and the tools of psychoanalysis or broadly psychology into Mahavidya, it will only add to the Mahavidya. Now, this is a reflection of a layman. I am neither a disciple nor an expert. But as a generic logic, it stands to reason that it should be so.
So, in the entire discussion and the previous discussions, we have been talking about the continuum of these Das Mahavidya, that how they're different forms where you have used the words like Ugra and Saumya, the two extremes, and in between the ambivalent ones, the ferocious ones, the soft mothers. Is there a way of starting the Mahavidya process from some other great mother?
Yeah. There are three broad ways of going into this process. The most common is starting with Kali.
Starting with
Kali,
Kali.
the most Ugra. So the whole most common is to start with Ugra, go to Saumya Ugra and go to Saumya. But if the person is not so strong, one can start with Saumya, go to Saumya Ugra, and then to Ugra. I would prefer this path personally.
So if at all, I'm so sorry for interrupting right here only. Sir, if as a psychoanalyst, if you see if in the history of the client, the mother is the client has an ambivalence towards mother, and the real mother is more of a Kali perceived as. So we start with Soumya because we have to establish a omnipotent, loving, all caring and blessing benign figure.
Right.
And then we move towards merging and vice versa otherwise. Okay.
True, because it also depends upon what is the ego strength of the person and how far the person is resolved related to this difficult issue. If the person already comes with a Kali difficulty,
and you threaten him.
yeah, you put him with Kali 24/7, man will run for his life. So in those cases, it is better to start with Tripura Sundari. And therefore, I personally feel that as a safe practice, although it may take a long time, right? And long time would mean it would defeat the very purpose of Mahavidya. then the very purpose of Mahavidya is to be short and intense. Other softer paths anyway are available for long drawn spiritual work. So the whole purpose of Mahavidya is to do it quick and intense for those who are capable of it. Like if you can complete a 4-year college in 2 years, why should you not be allowed to do it? But then we are talking about extremely capable people. We are not talking about the masses. So this is a very specific and a special aristocratic space for those who are very capable. But if those who are very capable still come with an unresolved trauma, then it is easier and safer to start with the Saumya and move to the Ugra. So I would say that without compromising much on the duration and intensity, safer practice is to move from Saumya to Ugra. But if somebody is already ready and does not have much difficulty, Ugra to Saumya is even a more quicker path, relatively speaking. So there are different ways of starting it, and you may also have to omit certain Mahavidyas if they are too difficult for you.
So how does this sadhana conclude? We know the final goal state is enlightenment. But if we see the entire gains with regard to one's transformation and also psychoanalytically, how does it conclude?
Psychoanalytically speaking, it concludes with a lot of gains. One is healing of pathology. 2 is cognitive clarity. 3 is faculty development, development of faculties. 4 is parapsychological development. 5th is mystical powers. 6th is quality of life. And 7th, if you are lucky enough, then some glimpses or even attainment of enlightenment. So these are the long-standing gains, and often in the process, some psychosomatic difficulties also get healed. So from a psychoanalytic standpoint, these are the gains, but equally important is the understanding of the process of these gains, because these are like the end goals which are achieved. So these end goals, some of the end goals psychoanalysis tries to achieve, not all of them. Psychoanalysis is not into enlightenment, not into mystical powers, not into parapsychological experiences. So it is a psychoanalysis plus kind of an approach in terms of goals. But from psychoanalytic standpoint, these are the gains. But equally important is, and I think one of the most interesting parts of the whole discussion is, psychoanalytically, how does the process of transformation happen? If you look at the whole Mahavidya process from a distance as a psychoanalyst, how do you understand that process? That I think is very important. Should I go into it or any
Why
other?
not, sir? So,
Yeah, any other point is
you're yes, definitely, sir. There is another point which we wanted to check, that if one proceeds to the worship, they are like different mothers, right? How do we understand how to proceed, when to proceed to the next one? What are the stages to be identifying with?
Yeah.
So from one Mahavidya, within the Mahavidya, and from one Mahavidya to some other Mahavidya, if at all.
Yeah. So this is a very complex decision which the guru has to take. The first complex decision is which to start with. The second complex decision is which to omit, if at all. The third is which to proceed to after completing one. So this is where the call has to be taken based upon the disciple's experience in the first, his ego strength, his life situation. That is very important. Because this is not something done by sannyasis in a vacuum. This is done by people living out like you and me. So their real life situation also is very important. Like if you are going through a difficult phase, you don't have to add to it by worshipping another difficult goddess, which will take you through even more intense experiences. So this is a very important call that somebody has to take, whether to continue with the Saumya, whether to move from Saumya to Ugra, whether to move from Saumya to Saumya Ugra, or from one Saumya to the next Saumya. So these are very individual based calls, which, and it is very important. It's very important to have the right chronology. So there is a general chronology prescribed, but it is extremely customized to the individual. And these are some of the calls which are very important, like whether to take the person or not. If yes, what to start with, what to omit, and how to chronologically sequence the whole thing. So this is something which has to be thought out. It is not random. You can't just jump. You can't just throw the coin in the air and say, I'll do this.
So it's a beautiful, fascinating discussion, sir.
Yeah, I think I missed one point, a very important point.
Sure,
The,
sir.
the psychoanalytic part of how it happens.
Yes, yes, sir.
I was about to go there and I missed it. Okay. It's very important to say psychoanalytically how the whole thing can be seen. Like, as a psychoanalyst, if you look at it from a distance, how do you analyze it? First, the person searches for a guru and finds one. And the moment he meets, there already is a transference.
Okay.
Just as when a patient calls a therapist, even for the first appointment, the transference already has started. And the transference usually of the parent person or an omnipotent person. Usually it is of an omnipotent parent. And therefore, psychoanalytically, the transference of omnipotence and parental omnipotence would be there on the guru right the moment you meet a guru. Before you meet the guru, there is a search for omnipotence. That there will be a guru who will miraculously lead me through all the difficulties of life and help me transform my life on earth into heaven. So there is a search for omnipotence which leads in the first place to the search of the guru. Also, there is a search for deliverance from our problems. That is also true. But at a practical level, there is a search for deliverance from our problems and fulfillment of our desires. But at a deeper level, there is a search for omnipotence which leads us in the first place to this kind of enterprises. Nobody goes to Mahavidya without a search for omnipotence. So first we see the search for omnipotence, which takes us and which makes these things fascinating. So this is first. Then the search for omnipotent guru. Then the moment we start, there is a superego happiness and a superego strength which activate inside of us. People usually talk only of superego pathology. They don't talk about superego strength and superego happiness. But that is also a very intense kick, the superego happiness, and a very noble one, almost a sacred happiness. So the superego happiness starts the moment we start on this path or any spiritual path. There is a superego happiness, and this comes from, structurally speaking, Sri Aurobindo talks about the psychic. And it is from the psychic that this happiness comes, a different kind of happiness when we are on the spiritual path, because we feel as though we are doing what a man ought to do in human existence. And there's a very different kind of happiness for that. I would call it the psychic happiness. Then you experience a superego freedom, as though you are freed from the shackles of everything that was shackling you. You also feel a super ego transcendence because you start seeing beyond events a grander design. Then you start the whole process of internalization, and that is a very important process. Internalization of the Guru, internalization of the Ishta Devata, and internalization of the Mahavidya. Also internalization of Ganesh. So this internalization process is very important. It happens primarily by what we call contiguity and adequacy, meaning something is present and adequately present. So presence and presence for a long time, that allows us to internalize and activate in us the qualities which are there in what is present before us. So there is a contagion of qualities. Or let me put it in a more neutral language, there is a transfer of qualities. Then we have the living phenomena, the living out of desires and fears. As the living with the Mahavidya starts and a conversation starts. And the conversation is very important because it's almost like a free association. That it's a conversation between the two of you, nobody else can hear it or see it, and you report it to the Guru. It's almost like reporting a free conversation, a free association. And that living it out is huge element of catharsis. And this
Can you repeat that, sir? Living in doubt.
living out has a huge element of catharsis. And this living out actually is a very deep excavation of all fantasies. And you move there from ordinary desires, which you are conscious of, to more repressed desires, to more free desires, and to finally the psychotic desires. And this is also the 4 levels of free association, which in psychoanalysis we should be going about, but most therapists get afraid of it. They never go into that kind of intensity of free association. Otherwise, the normal conscious free association happens. Then the unconscious free association happens. Rather, I would say the authentic free association happens. Then the purely free association happens, purely unconscious, and then the psychotic free association happens. If the person has adequate ego strength, and if the therapist is not afraid of, both of them are well off, you can actually explore all the levels of free association. And this is what happens in that living and reporting. And one way to look at it almost is to look at it like a lucid dream. It's a micro lucid dream. Not a micro, but a semi-lucid dream, which you go on living with eyes open. Like Jung used to say about psychotics, that they are dreaming in the world wide awake. That they are dreaming in the world wide awake. We dream with eyes closed, they dream with eyes open.
It is a state of somewhere beyond unconsciousness, which he is also referring to, and in the generation of this semi-lucid dream.
Yeah.
Is it the free disguising of the psychotic desires, which he's referring to in the lucid dreaming?
It's a calibrated loosening of repression. Because how do you differentiate the neurosis and the psychosis? In neurosis, there are holes in the repression barrier. And in psychosis, there is a big punch and a big, almost like a blowing off of the repression barrier. So when the repression barrier is blown off, what is repressed then is projected out, that becomes psychotic reality. So this is like, we don't go that far, and of course nobody should go that far, but this is like a calibrated loosening of the repressive barrier. that more than neurosis and less than psychosis, material flows out into that living with that deity. And as you report the conversation, it gets interpreted, analyzed by the guru, and the self-reflection, self-purification, self-knowing, self-transformation, all of that happens. Another important aspect is concretization. Because concretization also happens in this whole process. Also, there are effects, subtle effects of sound and visuals and all of that, but these are very important psychoanalytic areas that concretization happens. Not only in terms of the subtle being made concrete in certain spiritual processes, but also what is called incorporation, internalization, and identification. All the three also happen in relation to the idol or the deity. The incorporation, the internalization, and identification, all the three happen. It's only towards the end of identification that one is really ready for visarjan or letting go or mourning. It also brings out in that living relationship deeply repressed things, like one of the episodes we had was this: dreams I dare not dream again. That some dreams which used to come
Very interesting. It was.
recurrently, right? When I was a teenager, I find it emotionally very difficult to bring back those dreams. It's just too painful to bring back those dreams. So I call it dreams I dare not dream again. Those dreams which are highly repressed, they also come up in this living out. And one moves slowly from the surface self to the authentic self to the spiritual self. Because
So while you shared this about the repression barrier, the psychotic desires, the calibrated efforts towards moving in this process, this also brings that it can, the kind of vividness of all inner material and the emotional aspects and attachments of the experience of a person can lead to a semi-suffering kind of state if there is no guru. That means the container, even in Das Mahavidya, beyond the expertise and the guidance, is that of one who holds on to the person.
true, the guru provides that containing function, and the deity also provides the containing function
Even the concrete form.
in a more concrete form. And
So that becomes a container too. The idol becomes the container too, the deity and the idol.
and despite both of it, and despite the powers that you accumulate, suffering is unavoidable. In fact, in Mahavidyas, the suffering is intense. It may be for a short time, limited time, but it cannot be escaped. That the Mahavidya will drag you kicking and screaming through the process. This is not a Saumya process. The Saumya of Mahavidya also is very ugra compared to other Saumya Devis. So this is a very intense process. So the suffering will be there. And in fact, people report that events happen in life which are far more intense than before. Another way of stating the same thing would be this, that the repaying of the karmic debt is accelerated. The installments are increased. So if you were to repay the entire karmic debt in 10 years, with Mahavidya, you will repay in 2 years, but the installment per month will be higher.
Also, the third dynamic, there could be that of you at the mercy of the ferocious mother till you find her, till you merge with her, and being so vulnerable at the same time.
Yes.
You have not yet reached there in the inner psyche world of a person. You have yet not reached there, and the desire is there, and this vulnerability self also comes up. So it becomes like you're in total, either you have to get into total surrender or total dedication. Like there is no way out then.
So it is from the infantile helplessness in front of the omnipotent bad mother going all the way to experiencing union with omnipotence. That is the whole journey. That you start off as a helpless infant in front of a omnipotent bad mother, and you end up as a free person who on demand can experience oneness with omnipotence. And one of the elements here is that not only you work through fear, ambivalence, castration, the paranoid schizoid position, ambivalence. The moment you look at Kali, you cannot escape that this psychoanalytic phenomena have to be worked through. You have to work through the split. You have to work through ambivalence. You have to work through castration anxiety. You have to work through anxiety of omnipotence. All of that, you have to work through attachment and revulsion. But and of course, the journey will be, the first impact will be you will be terrified. You will get into the state of a helpless infant in front of an omnipotent bad mother. And slowly from there, you will go to see the good qualities of the bad mother and get into slightly depressive position. From there, you will see the noble acts of the mother and get into ambivalence. From there, you will see the beauty of elementals and the role that the mother plays in the universal scheme of things. And you get into a more profound appreciation of the mother beyond liking and disliking. It is more of pure knowledge. And that will slowly lead to love. Not the ordinary one, but a more profound philosophical love of elementals and of reality itself. So, this would be the psychoanalytic journey. But one important point as we go towards the close of it is, one of the cognitive aspects of this Das Mahavidya practice is that it leads you to conceptualization of a theory of everything. Not in scientific terms, but in essential terms. That you conceptualize a theory of everything, and that allows you a framework into which you can place all of life and all of universe. And that is a great cognitive empowerment and a relief giver. Because this also is very important. How do you make sense of the world in front of, placed in front of you? And you need in some language to conceptualize a theory of everything. And the Das Mahavidya allows you to conceptualize a theory of everything in an essential way.
More we listen, more profound it gets. It's been a fascinating discussion and mystically engrossing one too. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaidya. And dear viewers, hope you enjoyed it too. See you soon. Namaste.